Hi, this is Irv Shapiro with the Dr. Vax channel. I've recently completed assembling my fourth 3D printer. It's a Monoprice MP10. So now it's time for me to install a copy of Octoprint. I'm going to install that on a Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to be doing the configuration and the assembly using a Mac computer because I'm a Mac guy. However, all of the utilities I'm using are available on both a Mac and available on a PC under Windows, so you should be able to follow in either case. Okay, stay tuned and let's learn something together. To get started, we need a Raspberry Pi because that's going to be the computer that we install Octoprint onto. And instead of buying just a standalone Raspberry Pi, which we could buy for about $30, I like to buy them as a kit that includes a power supply and a case. And in fact an SD card. The kit that we're looking at, a kit with a 16 gigabyte SD card on Amazon, is about $65. So if we open this up, it starts with a bit of the read me first paperwork. We're not going to need any of that. Instead, let's look at the components. The first component inside is an actual Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi system on a chip is this large silver chip. That's the whole computer. Everything else around it is to support it. There are 4 USB ports, there's an Ethernet port, there is an HDMI port, and there's a port for the power supply. There's also a connector for a display we won't be using. So in essence, we're going to be using just this hardware connected to USB devices and a power supply for our purposes. Next, we have a power supply. Now, you can get more inexpensive power supplies. This one came bundled in the kit. But is it important that your power supply have enough amperage, can supply enough power? So this is a power supply that is 2.5 amps. That would be a larger power supply for, let's say, charging a USB. If you go much lower than that, you won't be able to power the USB camera that we're going to plug in. So here's a power supply. Next, we have a case. Now you could 3D print your own case, and many people do. I happen to think the Cana kit, C-A-N-A kit cases are quite nice. This is a snap together case, and we'll be putting this together in a minute. And then finally, we have the micro SD card, which is this very small card here, and also a converter that will adapt the micro SD card, quite small, almost dropped it, adapt the micro SD card so we can plug it into the computer. So before we're going to get started, let's take and assemble our Raspberry Pi. To assemble our Raspberry Pi, I'm going to put everything out on my silicon mat. Silicon mats are used because they're soft and they also tend to be better with static electricity. And we're going to start by taking the top and the bottom off the Raspberry Pi. We're then going to insert the Raspberry Pi into the case, and we're going to snap the bottom back on. And that is now securely in that case. Once the bottom is snapped on, we're going to take these 2 heat sinks that were supplied with this kit, and we're going to put them onto the chip. And the reason we need to do that is there is no fan in this kit. So if we didn't have a heatsink, it is possible that these chips would overheat. The heat sinks come with a bit of special adhesive on the back, so we have to carefully pull off the double stick tape adhesive, which is now sticking to me. And we'll put the heat sink onto the overall processor, that's right here. And then we'll put a heat sink on the second chip, I believe that's the communications chip. And that's right here. Now they recommend doing this after you assemble the case. I've actually done it both ways. And now we have the top that goes on our case. and we've just built a computer. So now to use this computer, we have to put an operating system into the computer. The operating system is going to slide into the slot for the SD card, which is right over here. Okay, now let's go to the computer, put the software onto the SD card, and then we'll start up our Raspberry Pi running Octoprint. Okay, let's switch in our browser. I happen to be using Google Chrome to a tab where I've loaded octoprint.org into my browser. And we'll see that on this page there's a link to download. We're going to go to that link. And then it takes us to an image called Octopi. Octopi is the Octoprint image, Octoprint software, that is to say, that has been configured to run on a Raspberry Pi. It includes support for both the basic 3D printer control and for running Cura on the Raspberry Pi. I don't recommend doing that. And also for streaming video, which I do recommend doing. So we're going to click on download, and let's wait for this to download. Now that our software has downloaded, we need to open that in our File Explorer or in our Finder in the case of a Macintosh. And we need to double click on it to unzip it, or use an unzip utility if you're on a Windows machine. When you unzip it, you'll see that you have a file called Octopi with stretch light. In my case, it's version 15.1, and it has an extension of IMG. We're going to take that image file now, which is 2.17 gigabytes, and we need to place it onto our SD card. To do that, we need to use a special program. The program that we're going to use is called Etcher, and you can find that on the web. If you go to etcher.io, it will redirect to this company name, and now you can download that for your Mac or your PC. Okay, we're going to open our program, and we're going to select the image file that we just downloaded. So if we go to our download directory, there was an image file. It's right here. Click on open. And now we need to select the drive. Now you need to do this carefully because you could inadvertently damage a different USB drive. So we're going to take our SD card. We're going to insert that into a USB port. My Apple drives, my WD drive. I have this mass storage device showing up at 16 gigabytes, a little less. That is the card that I just inserted. Click on continue, and now we'll click flash. That will take this 2.17 gigabyte image and put it onto the 16 gigabyte SD card. Now in the case of a Mac, it is going to use a utility underneath the application. That utility requires that you have administrator privilege. So that's why it's asking me for my password. When Etcher is done, my operating system, my Mac operating system, will not recognize the device yet because Etcher sort of did it behind the scenes. So we need to take and unplug the device and then plug it back in, and then it will show up as a device on our computer. So you'll see it shows up here as a device called boot. If I double click on that, and let's go to list mode, you'll see there's a variety of files on here with different licenses. The file that we're going to want to modify to customize this so it works with our particular Wi-Fi network. Because what Etcher has done is install a generic version of the software onto the SD card, is Octopi WPA supplicant.txt. And to work with that, we're going to use a program called Atom. Atom is a free text editor that you can download from the internet. You need to use a text editor designed for programmers. You can't use Notepad as an example on your Mac. It will save your file as rich text, which wouldn't work unless you're very careful to save as just plain text. You're better off downloading something like Atom to your computer. So we're going to right-click, we're going to say Open with Atom, and we'll now see our file. You'll see also all the other files in that directory. That's how this particular configuration works. Here's another file I had opened in the past. So we're going to go down to a place on here where it says WPA, WPA2 Secured Network. And you'll see in this case it's lines 26 to 29. Now any line with a pound sign is a comment line in this environment. We're going to take the comments off these 4 lines. You need to take the comments off the first line that says network all the way down to the line with the bracket, the ending bracket. And then we're going to put our network name in here. And now we need to enter our password. And then we do a file save to save the file. And then we can quit out of Atom. We're going to remove the SD card. And now if we come over here, we can take the SD card and insert it into our device. And for some reason, micro SD cards normally go in upside down. So we've inserted that into our device. And now we need to plug this in. Okay, now we're going to connect to our running computer, our Raspberry Pi, over the internet, over the Ethernet, effectively, over our network. And we're going to do that using a program called SSH, which is a secure terminal program. On a Mac, that comes standard. On a PC, you'll have to download an SSH terminal emulator. One that many people use that's completely free is called PuTTY, P-U-T-T-Y. But on a Mac, we just open a terminal session. Your terminal application is found in Applications, Utility, Terminal. It should look something like this. Then we'll type SSH, the name of the username we're connecting to, which is pi at, and then the address we're connecting to. And we're going to connect to octopi.local. Now, if this is the first time you're connecting, it's going to ask you if you want to add the location to the SSH directory. You should say yes in order to proceed. And then we have to type in the password, which is just Raspberry by default on this build. And we are now connected to that computer over a terminal emulator. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the password to something we can remember. So you type in PASSWD, which is the cat password command. Hit enter. You have to type in the current password, which is Raspberry. Enter. And then your new password. And you're going to want to make sure you get that typed in carefully. And retype it again. And now you're all set with your setup. So we're going to type exit. Okay, now we can open a browser. I'm going to open up Chrome. And we can go to octopi.local and hit enter. It's http://octopi.local. Now, if you've never gone there before, you may get a warning from Chrome that this is an unsecure website. You should go ahead and proceed anyways. You're using this inside your environment, your own closed environment. So you're going to get to a wizard that will step you through the setup. Click on Next. Now, this is a username password that you want to use for Octoprint, not for the Raspberry Pi. We've changed the core Raspberry Pi password to secure it already. This can be the same username and password if you chose to, but I'm going to make it my name, and then I'm going to type in a password. I'm going to keep access control enabled, meaning I require username and password to use Octopi. Now I'm going to go to next. There are no changes that I have to make on this screen, but I do want to enable connectivity check. Go to next. I want to enable the plugin blacklist. That will ensure that I don't inadvertently try to install a plugin that is not secure. Enable it and click on next. Now, I'm not going to actually be using a Cura profile, and the reason is the version of Cura that runs on a Raspberry Pi is relatively old at this point, so I'm going to be doing my slicing on my computer and then uploading the sliced profiles, the G-code files, manually. We'll show you how to do that. Click on next. Now I do need to give my printer a name. This is going to be a Monoprice MP10. Click on next. Everything is now ready to go, so I should click on finish. And now I can connect this instance of Octoprint to my printer. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back here and I'll show you quickly how to use it. Okay folks, it's been almost 17 minutes since we began this video. It's been a long road, but we are getting close. Now we need to connect from the USB port on our printer, that's step one, to any of the USB ports on the Raspberry Pi. If we're going to use a camera, and I recommend Logitech, just because they seem to be very reliable in using them in this configuration, we need to connect that to a second USB port. And finally, it's time to connect the power to our Raspberry Pi. It will reboot, reload with all of the components ready to get started. Now we'll go to a browser, and in our browser we'll see how to use the Octoprint software. The first thing we'll need to do is click on Connect. So we went to octopi.local, we signed in, and now I'm going to click on Connect, and this will connect to the printer. It'll come up and say it's operational, and let's look at the tabs across the top. This shows us the current temperature of the nozzle and the heat bed. I had loaded filament, so the nozzle is up to temperature. If we click on Control, we'll see that new webcam we just connected. There is no G-code loaded yet. Under time-lapse, we're going to tell it to create a time-lapsed image. Every time we go up a layer, go ahead and take a picture. So now let's load our first model. We're going to click on Upload. I sliced a bracket that I'm going to use on this printer. That has been uploaded, and now I can click on Load and Print. So if we go back to the temperature page, we'll see that our print bed is now starting to heat up. When the target temperature for our nozzle and our bed are at target temperature, the printer will begin to print. Now that the printer has come up to temperature, I hear in the background that it's printing. So if we go to the Control tab, we'll be able to see what's actually happening. So you'll see that the printer is moving into the home position. It's doing a test extrusion, and actually I'm not crazy about how it did that, so we will have to tune that. And now it's going ahead and it's beginning the print of the first layer. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. It introduced you to Octoprint. It also showed you how to construct Octoprint on a Mac. If this was helpful, please give me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe to this video, and share it with everyone you know. Thanks so much. Let's continue to learn things together.